Welcome back to Hardball. Are Republicans putting out the word that it's time to stop Sarah Palin? Just before the midterm election, Karl Rove told the London Telegraph, quote, "With all due candor, appearing on your own reality show on the Discovery Channel, I am not certain how that fits into the American calculus and of what keeps me or helps me see a person in the Oval Office." A few days later, Politico ran this headline, "Next for GOP leaders stopping Palin." A few weeks after that, some Bushes weighed in. Listen to this.
What's your read about Sarah Palin?
Well, I sat next to her once, thought she was beautiful, and I think she's very happy in Alaska, and I hope she'll stay there.
If it's between my mom and Governor Palin, I got to go with my mom, just in general, because she's my mother.
Well, that was Jeb Bush, of course. And then rising Republican star, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie chimed in.
Do you think Sarah Palin could do it?
Be vice president?
Be president.
Well, you know, who knows, Jimmy?
Yeah.
It's an amazing world.
Crazier things have happened, I guess?
I don't know, but it's an amazing world.
You got to like a guy who rolls his eyes when he's asked a political question. And then just yesterday, veteran Republican strategist Mike Murphy was on Meet the Press.
I've been a critic all along. Started on this show at the Republican convention saying I thought she was a bad strategic choice because she's a poison pill in the general election. Wipe us out, I believe. But in the Republican primaries, particularly in the movement conservative silo, which generally will win the Iowa caucus and therefore get a lot of momentum, she's very, very powerful if she runs. So I think she'll have a half-life, but she's going to be a terrifically powerful force. In some ways, for good, she's kind of a polemicist and everything, but as a candidate, she'd be a disaster. And we'll see if other Republicans start to take that position quietly. A lot of them do.
As a candidate, should be a disaster. So is the word out. Pat Buchanan and the Washington Post's Eugene Robinson are here. They're both MSNBC political analysts. Gene, I want to start with you because you're not, I don't think, a member of the active Republican Party right now. I've got to get your views on this because there does seem to be a pattern of not a whispering campaign, and right out in the open campaign of clearing the deck of Sarah Palin. I'm not sure it works, but it's certainly trying to work.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, it'll come as a shock to you that I'm not on the Republican Star Chamber email list, so I don't get those emails. But maybe one went out. I mean, clearly there are people who are getting very nervous about Palin and her what I would call preeminent position in the Republican field right now. I mean, there's nobody who's got her charisma. There's nobody who's got her Twitter following. There's nobody who's got a reality show like she's got. She's Sarah Palin, and it's not just Iowa, as Murphy said, where she could do well. When she gets to my home state of South Carolina, they're going to love her there too. So if I were a Republican thinking about running for president, I'd be really worried about Sarah Palin too.
Pat, is there a real differential between popularity in the evangelical wing of the Republican Party and general election prospects, or is that unfair? Is that a left-wing assessment?
It's a left-wing assessment, but it's also not unfair in this sense, Chris. Let me take Mike Huckabee, who ran a very strong primary race back in 2008, but I think he bumped his head at a point because he is so strongly identified with the evangelical Christian South, if you will. Yeah. I think he would have a tough time in a general. There's no question about it that alone gives you enormous strength and power in a nominating process that does not necessarily translate in the general. You
mean the Republican Party wouldn't be advised to run Marjo for president?
I don't know who Marjo is.
Oh,
I'm not
come on. Remember he was the young preacher? Come on, you. If I get outside the narrow focus of politics, I lose you, Pat. Let me ask you this. I'm just talking about people. He had a preacher's background. Does that preacher's sort of Jesus on the radio, religion type of religion, turn off the suburban Republican voter?
There's no doubt, Chris, it turns off some, but let's take Sarah Palin now. She has the Tea Party, the Christian right, the right to lifers. Many of these folks come out of the Democratic Party that you grew up in, and their children do.
I grew up in
and
the
so
Republican
that's
Party.
Real reach across there. But the suburban Republicans can be overrated, you know. Yeah. There's no doubt that, say, Reagan, to get those folks with him and then go after the Reagan Democrats, he did a very smart thing in putting George H.W. Bush of Walker's Point on his ticket with him to close the party and then go after basically the conservative Democrats and independents.
Do you think, Gene, that the Democrats are hoping that they can get a break and get a weak opponent coming around, because it's going to be a very tough time for anybody running for re-election in America, especially trying to carry the whole country and getting 270 electoral votes next time as an incumbent. Do you think the White House people, can you tell, are they just rooting for her or rooting for Huckabee or somebody on the evangelical right who will just have no chance in the Philadelphia suburbs, the New York suburbs, the Cleveland suburbs, the kinds of places they need to win?
Well, sure, I think they are rooting for that. I think it's a mistake, though, if that's their electoral strategy for 2012, to root for a defeatable Republican opponent. In fact, what I think they have to do is build an affirmative case, and then if on top of that, if on top of having built your affirmative case for re-election, then you also happen to get Sarah Palin as your opponent with her high negatives, then I think you feel a lot better going into 2012 than otherwise you might.
Let's take a look at Sarah Palin. Pat, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a great picture of Sarah Palin coming up. Here she is, a scene from last night's episode of her reality show. Where do you catch this? This is almost hard for people like me who grew up in the sort of the burbs and the cities to appreciate, but let's listen to it.
He's coming right here. Just wait till it turns broadside and stops. Okay. Go ahead, right?
Good. There you go, baby. There you go.
Okay, good.
There you go.
Okay, good.
That's just perfect.
So what do we make of that, Pat? I mean, this is unusual. That wasn't John Kerry and camo. That was the real thing.
That wasn't John Kerry doing the, what is it, the thing he did off the shores of Nantucket or whatever?
Windsurfing. No, it's a different line of country.
Well,
but,
listen,
I mean, it appeals certainly probably to deer hunter country in Pennsylvania, I would bet.
But this is where she has real strength. I mean, hunters and sportsmen and outdoor folks and men will really say, you know, this is really a terrific gal. And, Chris, let me say this. She is getting picked at, but they're not by major, I think, with some exceptions, major figures. Look at how Mitt Romney is handling this, and Bobby Jindal is handling this. Mitt Romney is praising her. Jindal said, of course, she could be elected. This is what the Republican Party has got to do. With regard to the Republican establishment, they wanted Rockefeller instead of Goldwater, Rockefeller instead of Nixon in '68, George H.W. Bush instead of Reagan. And the Democratic Party wanted Goldwater and they wanted Reagan. They were wrong about Reagan and right about Goldwater. So I would not, if I were the Democratic Party, automatically start celebrating, because this woman has an enormous amount of reach outside of politics in culture.
Okay, she's a dead shot, too. Anyway, thank you, Pat Buchanan and Eugene Robinson.